All right, so here we go. Windows Defender Firewall under Network Management. It's a built-in application that protects computers from malicious attacks and blocks unauthorized traffic through inbound and outbound rules or filters. So it's basically a firewall. We already discussed firewalls in the last video that we went through. So this should be a review. If you haven't seen the firewall video, you should go watch the firewall video. As an analogy, it's equivalent to who's coming in and going out of your house. That's basically what the Windows Defender Firewall rules, inbound and outbound rules. That's what that means. So hackers will abuse firewalls by bypassing existing rules. If you've configured the firewall to allow incoming connections, they'll try to manipulate it to actually creating a remote connection to the victim computer through whatever port you've allowed to attack or have come in. You know what I mean? Whoever can access that we can access that by accessing the WF MSC, which is Windows Firewall MSC, and go ahead and pull that up. So we'll probably look at that in a little bit just to answer some of the questions here, but this is a screenshot for you, and it just opens it up, Windows Defender Firewall. And then from there, we're going to just see what the general rules are. It's all under the Windows Defender Firewall properties. And this is our public profile, private profile, domain profile, etc., etc., etc. There are three main profiles, which I just mentioned those. They have to be activated. A private profile has to be activated with the blocked incoming connections while using the computer at home. Detailed settings for each one of them could be available by clicking on the properties. And then whenever possible, you got to enable the default settings. And for blocking all the incoming traffic, it's always better to configure the firewall with a default deny. So default deny or explicit deny should be the rule, like the standard rule across the board for everything, meaning deny every incoming connection with the exception of the ones that you go and you allow. So excuse me, it's not explicit deny, it's default deny and then it's explicit allow. So you default deny everybody and then you explicitly allow a handful of connections to come in. And then you want to disable any unused networking devices. So routers, Ethernet cards, Wi-Fi adapters, access points, any of that stuff. Those things enable data sharing between computers, and if the device is not configured properly or if it's not being used, then it's a good idea to just disable the thing so that anybody who's trying to attack you can't access those things and use them for data retrieval. And a lot of times if they're not being used or they're improperly configured, so let's rephrase that. If they're not being used, there's a high chance that they haven't been configured recently, so they haven't been patched or updated, so on and so forth, and that leaves it open to a vulnerability. So if it's not being used, just shut it down or disable it so that you don't leave yourself open to a vulnerability, because then if you have to update everything, you have to patch everything, and it just makes it easier for you to manage certain things or manage your list of assets that you're supposed to be securing by only looking at the things that are active and enabled. To disable the unused networking devices, we go to Control Panel, System and Security Settings, the System, and then Device Manager, and then you can disable anything that is not used. And so this is what it looks like in this particular case. You go to Device Manager and it shows you everything. You got everything from the Bluetooth to disk drives to the keyboards, monitors, and then you have network adapters. And so for all of the network adapters, these are the things that is available on this particular machine that they took the screenshot from. And so you can go ahead and try to see which ones you need to deactivate because of their lack of use or so on and so forth. So disable the SMB protocol. It's a file sharing protocol exploited by hackers in the wild. The protocol is primarily used for file sharing in a network, and it's the server message block protocol. And we've used this a lot in our exploits running Metasploit, where we've kind of exploited the SMB service or the SMB protocol on a Windows machine. And because of the fact that it's primarily used for file sharing, you have to disable it if your computer is not a part of the network by issuing the following command in PowerShell. So disable Windows optional feature. The feature name is SMB1 protocol. And that's one of those big ones because we've actually used it in a lot of cases to run exploits against the SMB, the file sharing server message block. And then we have the local domain name system, which is DNS. The domain name system is DNS. It's a naming system that translates fully qualified domain names into IP addresses. If the attacker places themselves in the middle, they can intercept and manipulate the DNS requests and point them to their controlled systems, since DNS replies are neither authenticated nor encrypted. And the host file is located in Windows acts like the local DNS. Or what am I saying? The host files located in Windows act like local DNS, and it's responsible for resolving host names to the IP addresses. Malicious actors try to edit that by rerouting traffic to their command and control server, their C2 server, and this is where the file, this is what the file actually looks like. So it literally opens up inside of a notepad. It's like a .txt file, and so these are the local hosts or the host on this particular computer, and the IP address for a local host on across the board with every single machine is 127.0.0.1, and then there's an actual IP address that's assigned to you by your router, and that's where this information goes. It's inside the DNS system or the DNS file. I try to like paraphrase a lot of these things by just looking at keywords and kind of reading, instead of reading word for word, I try to just like kind of glance through the sentence and try to give you a paraphrase, so it doesn't, I'm not literally sitting here just reading a freaking text on the screen. But sometimes I mess up completely what the meaning of the sentence is, like this particular sentence that I just messed up. I'm like, dude, what am I even saying? That doesn't even sound right. So anyways, now we're going to talk about mitigating the address resolution protocol attack, which is address resolution protocol is ARP. You'll see that a lot. And ARP tables or ARP routing is what you'll see a lot. The address resolution protocol resolves MAC addresses from given IP addresses saved in the workstation's ARP cache. So MAC addresses are a layer 2 conversation or a layer 2 address, and then IP addresses are layer 3. And so the ARP cache connects MAC addresses to IP addresses. And the ARP offers no authentication and accepts responses from any user in the network. An attacker can flood the target system with ARP responses, which point to an attacker-controlled machine and put them in the middle of the communication. MAC spoofing, MAC address spoofing is very, very common. And it's one of those frequent attacks because it's really easy to spoof a MAC address. Not as easy as spoofing an IP address, although it is also easy to spoof an IP address. So it's very, very important to understand this. ARP entries can be checked using ARP-A in the command prompt. And then it's a different command inside of Linux, so it doesn't apply to Linux. But ARP-A, so ARP-A stands for all. And then you get to see what all of the IP addresses connected to MAC addresses are. This is an IP address. This is the MAC address. The table contains MAC addresses in the middle, IP addresses on the left, yada, yada, yada. If the table includes a MAC mapped to 2 IPs, you're probably susceptible to an ARP poisoning attack. To clear the ARP cache and prevent this from happening, you do ARP-D to delete or clear the ARP cache. Now, preventing remote access to the machine. Remote access, RDP, very, very simple. Remote desktop protocol is that port 3389, I want to say. I hope I'm right, but I think it is 3389 for RDP. We've done this a lot in our pen testing exercises. We've gone through a lot of exploits against Windows machines by using the RDP port and the RDP service. And this is something that you gotta plan for and you gotta mitigate for. So you gotta disable remote access by going to settings, remote desktop, And don't do this in the VM. I think if we do this, the VM itself is going to crash because we're literally remote connected to that virtual machine. But it's something that you want to do if you don't want anybody to have remote access to your machines. And it's very, very important. And if somebody does get remote access to a machine, or if you want it to be able to get remotely logged into, you have to have explicit rules for the IP addresses that you're going to allow to connect to that, and times, and a VPN is probably in order. And there are a lot of different steps that you can take to ensure that nobody else other than the person that's been authorized gets to RDP into your machine, which is very, very important. So we're now going to answer these questions here for this task. Open Windows Firewall, click on Monitoring in the left pane. Which of the following profiles is active? Domain, public, or private? So let's open up the Windows Firewall real quick. All right, so here's Windows Defender Firewall, and we're going to click on Monitoring in the left pane here. There is no option called Monitoring, so let's see what we can find. That's interesting. So when you search for Windows Defender Firewall directly in the search pane at the bottom right here, it brings up this thing, which is not the same as Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security. And so I will close this thing. And the way that I found this one was I opened up the run application and I searched for wf.msc. So that is the reason why we couldn't see monitoring, and there's monitoring. And now the question asks, which of the following profiles is active? So let's look at the active profiles. From the very get, it literally just says the private profile is active. So I don't think I need to look at anything else. I'm just going to type in private, and that is indeed the case, and that is the profile that's active. And so the next question here is find the IP address that's resolved for the website TryHackMe in the virtual machine as per the local host file. So we need to now go inside this text file right here, which is for C yada yada yada. So I'm going to go and run this thing right here. So I'm just going to do run, and we're going to type that in here, C Windows we'll open it up with Notepad, and there it is. So it says TryHackMe. What is the IP address that's been resolved to that? And that's the IP address for TryHackMe. So we're going to copy that thing and drop that over here, and voila. And so open the command prompt and enter ARP-A. And what is the physical address? So the MAC address. So command prompt is cmd.exe. And so we're going to do ARP-A, and we're going to get all this information here. And so for 255, yada, 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 what do we want over here? And this is it. So this is our piece of information here. I forgot that I can't right click and copy. So I think Control C should copy it. Not Command C, Control C. That's very important. There we go. We got it. All right, cool. So there you go. We got our info here inside the network management task. So let's go to application management now. And you got the application store. So actually it's the trusted application store. Microsoft Store offers a complete range of applications, so on and so forth. And those applications would not have made it in that store without being scanned, or I guess screened. I guess we could say screened or vetted for being a proper application, right? So malicious actors behind legitimate software with Trojans and viruses go ahead and upload it on the internet to infect and access the victim computer. So downloading applications from the Microsoft Store makes sure that the downloaded software is not malicious because it's been vetted, and otherwise it wouldn't end up in the Microsoft Application Store. So it's very important to understand that, and don't download stuff from Pirate Bay or a lot of these other places, because believe it or not, there's hackers that upload things on there, and it could be a legitimate software. It could be something that you actually do need or want to use, and it's one of those things that I mean, you gotta consider, you gotta factor. I have downloaded Adobe Creative Suite, for example, from Pirate Bay before, and I mean, I don't think that something happened to me, and this was before I got into cybersecurity, so I never actually verified to see if there was anything that was installed on those things, and I never scanned a an antivirus against the downloads that I had and shit like that. But something as simple or as known as Adobe Creative Suite could be embedded with malware or a Trojan or something that could be running in the background as soon as you install it, and now your computer is hooked, or there's something, ransomware or something that gets installed on your computer. So it's just something to note and something to be aware of. Safe application installation, only allow installation of applications from the Microsoft Store, and then that's just another one of those things that when you turn it on as a setting inside of Microsoft, then it doesn't allow anything else to take place other than apps that have been downloaded from the Microsoft Store. And this is one of the things that I really have to take my hat off to Microsoft, that they've have all of these features installed in their machines that make it so that Microsoft is the premier choice across most businesses. Something like 90% of desktops and computers and everything like that in the business world is Microsoft. And the reason for that is because there's so many of these inherent security features that have been installed on these things that just make it a great choice for somebody to run a business. So removing malware through Windows Defender AntiVirus, it allows real-time protection, browser integration, application guard, which is web session sandboxing, which is really a big deal as well, to block malicious websites or sessions to make changes on the computer, which means in your web session, there's a sandbox type of an environment, which is a military term for essentially running a test inside a simulated type of an environment or a rehearsed type of an environment to make sure that everything's all good before you actually go into a live environment. And so in cybersecurity, a sandbox is something that if something runs inside that sandbox, it doesn't infect or affect the rest of the system, because the sandbox opens it in there, and then you're like, oh, this is malicious, you shouldn't mess with it. And so that's really amazing that they actually have this in the web session, meaning inside of a web browser, to block malicious websites or sessions, so on and so forth. So, and then controlled folder access, protecting your memory areas in the RAM and folders from unwanted applications. All of these things are really, really amazing stuff. And we did talk about this in Windows Fundamentals. So then you have Microsoft Office hardening. There's something called macros that can be in the metadata of PDF files or text files and stuff like that. So disabling macros is very important so that nobody can actually install malicious code inside of the macros of the file. And this is one of those things, again, that you see a PDF file inside an email and you think it's fine and there's nothing wrong with it. And then as soon as you open up that PDF file, the macros, the code that's embedded inside those macros, goes and releases whatever the Trojan is or ransomware, anything like that. And that just is a big freaking pain in the ass, let me tell you. Banks can't disable macros because they heavily rely on complex invoices and formulas, but universities can disable them because they don't need all the complexity that banks need. The attached VM contains a batch file based on best practices and Microsoft attack surface reduction rules for hardening Microsoft Office. To execute this, right-click on the file that's on the desktop and run it as an admin, and it will go ahead and run it. So let's do that. Let's actually go and run this thing because I don't know how long it's going to take for it to actually run. So office.bash, here we go. And we're going to run it as an admin. Yes, give it permission and let that thing run. And then we'll go into App Locker, which is our next piece. It's recent and it allows you to block specific executable scripts and installers from execution through a set of rules. And we can configure this through the local group policy editor by the following method. So it's under Windows settings, security settings, application control policies, and then App Locker. and then you can configure the rule enforcement of the app locker and where it can and cannot run. And then when you do that, it opens up the executable rules. So when you go through app locker to block a file based on the publisher name, and then there you go. This is kind of what it looks like. And it might have us actually run this as well just to see what it can do. And WinRAR is one of those things. And then there you go, file name. And now you have the rule that's been placed for executables. So it's super user friendly. And then when you go and try to run WinRAR, and then you say run, it says it's been blocked from your system by the administrator, right? So you go to executable rules under app locker, just as a review one more time, click to create a new rule, and then you just go through the wizard and you want to deny access to that rule, and based on the publisher, or deny access to the executable, excuse me. And then so the reference file that you're going to need to refer to is the WinRAR, and then by the file name, and that's it. So very, very, very user friendly. Microsoft Edge is a browser that's available on Windows based on Chromium, in line with Google Chrome, and Brave, which is similar to Tor because it actually runs on a proxy and provides security and privacy. So it often acts as an entry point to a system for pivoting and lateral movement, and those are pen testing terms. And it's therefore of utmost importance to block and mitigate critical attacks carried out through a browser that includes ransomware, ads, unsigned applications, Trojans, stuff like that. Protecting the browser through Microsoft Smart Screen I have now actually never even heard of this. So it helps you protect from phishing, malware sites, and software when using Microsoft Edge. It helps to make informed decisions for downloads and lets you browse safely in Edge, displaying an alert if you are visiting a website that's suspicious, vetting downloads by checking their hash, signature, etc., protecting against phishing and malicious sites by checking visited websites against threat intelligence databases. This is huge. This is like a really big deal. And so if you want to turn this on, Smart Screen, you go to Settings, Windows Security, App and Browser Control, Reputation-Based Protection, and scroll down to Smart Screen, and then turn that thing on right here. That is so freaking awesome. Then you open Microsoft Edge, go to Settings, and in Privacy Search Services, set Tracking Prevention to Strict to avoid tracking through ads, cookies, and etc. And that, again, is also really freaking awesome that they have this. So very, very cool. Let's answer these questions. Windows Defender Antivirus is configured to exclude a particular extension from scanning. What is the extension? So let's go to Windows Defender Antivirus one more time and see what we have blocked here. Okay, so this one was not inside of this thing. It wasn't inside Windows Defender Firewall with Advanced Security. It's actually inside Windows Security itself. And then there's the shield icon right here, which is Virus and Threat Protection. And then when you go there, there is Virus and Threat Protection Settings. And so we go to Manage Settings. And then from here, we need to find something called Exclusions. And then we do Add or Remove Exclusions. And then it shows you what is already on the exclusions list, which is a file type, and that is .ps. And there's our answer. So very good. Now, a Word document is received from an unknown email address. It is best practice to open it immediately on your personal computer, and that would be nay. What is the flag that you received after executing the Office Hardening batch file? Oh, I see. So let's go and check. Did I close it? I think I closed it. Let me see. I did close it. Darn. Okay, so I will go. I'll run this again. I didn't even notice that. I will run this again. And where's our flag here? All right, here we go. So just so you know, when you right click on this and then run it as an administrator, that didn't work for me. So what I did was I searched for cmd.exe in here, and then I right clicked on this and ran it as an administrator, and then I went and ran the office .batch file, and it finished. And then here is the flag. So thm 110. And there we go. Bunch of ones and zeros. That's all we need. So there we go. We finished it and we ran that and it is now complete. So let's press enter or something. Press any key. There we go. Okay, cool. So let us now move on to storage management, which is the task number 6. All right, storage management, encryption through BitLocker. Okay, I've heard this before. Encryption of the computer is one of the most vital things to which we usually pay little attention. The worst nightmare is that someone gets unfettered access. Unfettered, look at that, that's a good word. Unfettered access to your device's data. Encryption ensures that you or someone that you share the recovery key with can access the stored content. Microsoft, for its business edition of Windows, utilizes the encryption tools by BitLocker. So let's have a quick look at this. And it's on the home edition of Windows 10, and we've read about it in Task 8 already. So, actually this is not, I don't think this is this Task 8. I think it's for the Windows Fundamentals Task 8, which we went through and looked at BitLocker right here at the bottom. So we can go to Start, Control Panel, System Security, BitLocker, Drive Encryption, and see if the option to BitLocker Drive Encryption is enabled or not. And that might be something that we do have to check out. So let's see, we do need to check out. So let's, instead of going through the whole thing and then restarting all these things again, I'm actually just going to go ahead and open BitLocker. And from there, we'll see what we can do here. So open BitLocker. Oh, there's a BitLocker recovery key that was there too. So BitLocker is off in our case, and then fixed data drives, so BitLocker on, so on and so forth. We don't have any of these things because we're on a virtual machine. So let's see what the question down here says. As security engineer, we configured the attached VM and stored a BitLocker recovery key in the same computer. Yeah, we just saw that. Can you read the last 6 digits of the recovery key? So that's where it was actually. So BitLocker, where is it? Not BitClocker, BitLocker. BitLocker, come on, I saw it. There was a recovery key. All right, so there it is. It is inside our documents folder. So I'm gonna open up Notepad as an administrator just in case I need access to it as an admin. And then we're gonna go to File and open the file. And we're gonna go to our documents folder. So which documents folder is it in? Because it says this PC documents, and there it is. So let me see. Let's try one more time. File, open. We're going to go to this PC, and inside of the this PC, we're going to go to documents, and there it is. Okay. There we go. And there it is. And so now it says, what? Can you read the last 6 digits of the recovery key, which is this thing right here? So 377564. Is our recovery key, last 6 digits. How many characters does the BitLocker recovery key have in the attached VM? I don't know. So 6 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would be 64. Oh wow, my Jesus. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. 48. That would be 48. I can't even do basic math. You know what's funny? I have to do basic math in Farsi because I remembered my multiplication tables in Farsi. So it's actually really hard for me to do it in English. And so whenever I read something like this, I literally translate it to Farsi in my mind. And then I go ahead and get the result. So I did it at first in English and I was like, no, that's not right. And then I did the Farsi multiplication and I was like, that's what it is. Okay. So anyways, backup file is placed on the desktop on the attached VM. What is the extension of the backup file? And that's BAT, right? Isn't that what this is? Or maybe it's not the BAT file actually. It's my Windows backup. Yeah, there you go. BKF. That's what it is. And I mean, I didn't even need to do the rest of the contents, but let's go through the rest of the contents. Why not? So that was BitLocker. We have Windows Sandbox, which is, we already talked about it earlier in this task, so I'm not going to go too crazy into the definition of it. But there is something called Windows Sandbox, and you can install it in the safe environment, and it's not a part of the host machine that we have. It'll remain sandboxed. Once the Windows sandbox is closed, everything, including files, software, and states, will be deleted, and we would require virtualization enabled on the OS to be able to run this, and we cannot try this in the attached VM that we have. But steps for enabling the sandbox feature are like this. So you click Start, search for Windows features and turn it on, select the sandbox and click OK to restart it. Windows sandbox will be included in the Windows distribution itself. If you want to close it, you click the close button and it's going to disappear. Opening suspicious files in a Windows sandbox before blindly executing them is recommended. And this is, again, another one of those things that's really awesome that Windows does. So Windows Secure Boot, an advanced security standard, checks that your system is running on the trusted hardware and firmware before booting, which ensures that your system boots up safely while preventing unauthorized software access from taking control of your computer, like malware. You're already in a secure boot environment on our virtual machine here anyways. If you run a modern PC with Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, UEFI, the best replacement for BIOS or Windows 10, basically. And you can check the status of it by going to the MS Info 32 and then see if you have Secure Boot off or on. So just to kind of check this one for ourselves, we can go ahead and do that. So if we go to, we're going to do run one more time here. And from run, we're going to search for MS Info 32 actually. So MS Info 32, and then we're going to look for Secure Boot, and Secure Boot is unsupported in our case, so it's not even supported in this case, and BIOS mode is legacy. So yeah, in this particular case, it's not supported. I think it's because it's a virtual machine, so that's probably the reason why. Then you want to enable file backups. So it's not the least important one, definitely, but it is the last option that we're talking about here. And you want to enable file backups because sometimes shit hits the fan and you want to make sure that you have backups regularly. And if you lose essential data files, you can recover them by restoring your actual computer through the last backup that you had. And you can do daily backups, which is very recommended, especially if you're running on a computer that is very important and has a lot of information that's necessary. And it's just the best thing to avoid disasters like malware attacks or hardware failure. And you can go to settings, update and security, and backups to do backup using a file history. And then adding a drive is also really good to have as kind of like a one of those things that it won't save on the actual local computer's drive to take up space on the local computer. It will just go into the drive that you have dedicated specifically for your backups, and that way it'll just be guaranteed that you won't have any issues. So the most convenient option is enabling it from the file history option, a built-in functionality of Windows 10 and 11. And we've already answered our questions, so we don't even need to worry about that. So let's go into updating Windows, and then it's one of the quick ones, and then we're gonna get our little cheat sheet and we will be out of here. All right, so updating, it's super freaking basic and understandable. The main reason why you want to update is that hackers are continuously trying to find new exploits and new ways in. And there's literally an entire industry dedicated to penetration testing and companies that make billions of dollars for being hired to do penetration testing exercises so that they can find different ways in. And Microsoft will even pay you if you find different ways into their most recent distributions. And that's actually genuinely something I'm considering to do as a career path, just by getting really good at pen testing and kind of attacking vulnerabilities and trying to find new vulnerabilities and new exploits and stuff like that. So every time that something like that happens, Windows and every other distribution, so Mac OS and all these different companies, they create updates. They come up with a new update that has patched that vulnerability, and then they release that update. And that is very important to consider when you are the security engineer of a company. Like your distribution of Microsoft Windows should be updated at all times, and automatic updates make that easier. At least update notifications should be turned on so you know what's going on. But all of these things are usually patched and taken care of as soon as you just create, or as soon as they create a new distribution and they do an update release. And that's sometimes the biggest thing that you can do to make sure that the system is secure, is just making sure that you have an updated version of the OS and you install an updated version of the OS. So really, really basic, but extremely powerful. And if you just go to update and security inside the control panel, you can check for updates and it'll tell you whether or not there's a new one. And then, you install it as you have it. You can turn on automatic updates. If you don't do automatic updates, I recommend that you check for updates daily, maybe even multiple times a day, once in the morning, once before you leave, just to see if everything's all good, and then run it again, right? So that's it for updates. Users who run the older Windows versions are always at greater risk and vulnerable to new security threats, so be careful about that. And that's all, again, just make sure that you have the most recent version and the most recent update. So what is the CVE score for the vulnerability CVE 2022, which was literally a couple of years ago? Let's search Google for this thing and see what we can find from the NIST website. What is the vulnerability score for this thing? So we have 7.5 or, whoops, I shouldn't have clicked on it, 7.5 or 7.8. So the CVS version, Common Vulnerability Scoring System, version 3 point whatever or 2 point whatever. So I wonder which one they're grading it by, but it's basically either 7.5 or 7.8. So let's see what we get here. I'll do 7.5. Whoops, do one dot. And that's not it, so they're going by the CV2. So there you go. And that is the severity of that vulnerability. And if we just look at it real quick, we can see what this thing even is. So Microsoft Windows Server Message Block version 3 suffers from a null pointer dereference in versions of Windows prior to the April 2022 patch by sending a malformed file normalized name information request over a named pipe. An attacker can cause a blue screen of death crash of the Windows kernel. For most systems, this attack requires authentication, except in the special case of Windows domain controllers, wow, where the unauthenticated users can always open named pipes as long as they can establish an SMB session. Wow. Typically, after the BSOD, the victim server will reboot. That's gnarly when you think about that. Holy shit. This part is actually really crazy. So, except in the special case of Windows domain controllers, which is literally the highest privilege account on a Windows Active Directory, and they don't need to authenticate themselves, or at least they didn't need to prior to this. That's insane, yo. Okay, anyways, so that's it for that updating Windows. So let us look at this cheat sheet, and I'm gonna download mine. All right, so here's what we got. Is your system still at risk of a security breach? Hardening is a never-ending process. It's continuous. So you can't ever say that your job is done and your system is now fully protected, because there are attackers always trying to find a new way in. So you gotta try to figure it out, right, all the time. So we have to be active and smart-minded to participate in the continuing process. And we must keep in mind the defender's dilemma, which states that breaches are inevitable. Because defenders have to be right 100% of the time, whereas attackers only have to be right once. And in this room, we've learned a lot of stuff. And this is our cheat sheet. I already downloaded it, and this is exactly what it looks like. So this is exactly the PDF. So identity access management, network level, application level, storage, these are the basic actions that you need to take to just make sure that all of this stuff is taken care of. And as we went through the password policy, you saw what all of the different things were to secure a password. So it's not like it's just saying use a strong password. You need to make sure that you actually create different levels of security for that password group policy. And then apart from that, use multi-factor authentication or physical keys or any of those other things to just make sure that it's not only the password that is being used. So very, very cool little cheat sheet. And that is it for our room. And we are now officially done with this. And we can move on to the very next task that we have, or not the next task, I guess, the next specific room in our path for security, which is going to be the Active Directory hardening room. If you are studying for your security engineer certification or security analyst, Pentest Plus, ethical hacker, any of those things, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video drops. We talk about all of that stuff on this channel all the time. And the information is actually very applicable to your certification exams and your day-to-day job as a security engineer, for example. And TryHackMe is the place for millions of people who are studying security engineering. It's literally, they literally have millions of students. And it's just one of those places that I think is very, very valuable to be a part of. And if you're not a part of it, at the very least, check these videos out, because these videos are going to help you. And I have spent a good amount of time on TryHackMe to actually get myself into the top 1%. So it is a little bit of a flex for me. I am 11,297 out of the 2 million plus users that are on TryHackMe. So I really do find this a very, very useful website. And if you're not going to get your membership, which there is a free membership and you can get a discount through the link below for the paid membership. But if you're not going to get that membership, at the very least, subscribe to this channel so that you can get all of this information that you can use as your job on a security engineer or for your certification exams. So apart from that, it would just be really nice to have you as a part of our community. We would love to see you in the comment section. And if you got any questions, drop a comment. If you just want to say hi, drop a comment. Yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. This has been the room for Microsoft Windows hardening as a part of the network and system security module for the security engineer pathway of TryHackMe. Love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. I will see you in the next room.